I put question marks down because I wanted to have your thoughts and opinions as to any of the resources that you might have come across that you might seem a little off the beaten track, but you found really helpful. Does anybody have any other? Yes.
Political cartoons.
Yes, political cartoons, yes. That is so very true. And on that same vein, probably plays. If there were any particular plays, that were written during that time period, because, of course, they're always speaking to the world climate, what is exactly going on. Yes. Wills. Probates and wills. Yeah. See, oh, quilts. Yes, the quilts. I haven't come across any. I think it's because I'm still, most of my interpretation is staying in the 18th century, so I haven't had any story quilts yet.
I've done a lot of quilt research, and the quilts, you don't get into story quilts until you get into the Civil War era.
Yeah.
I've got all the research on that, and everybody wants to see it.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't get the story quilts until Civil War era.
So, I mean, if that is part of your place, and we'll get to that in just a second, if that's part of your interpretation in your place, that would be an excellent resource.
One thing I have found a lot is local historical societies. And I'm a librarian and I'm a historical researcher, and I've taken lots of courses at the Maryland Archives, the historical archives, and so on, and using your the way they joined the libraries in Virginia.
Yeah,
incredible.
the databases. Yeah.
Well, one thing I found is that people don't do a Google search, and I'll tell you why. Historical societies and research libraries are not indexed in Google. You have to go to the library itself, or you have to go to the research site itself. Their stuff isn't research, their stuff isn't accessible. So you actually have to go to the archives. You have to
physical space.
To some of these individual places. But I taught in the school system, we did a lot of primary and research and so on. So one thing I have found is if you go to a historical society and then get into their database, oh my gosh, so many of them retired people like me, have volunteered to scan in their wills, scan in their probates, put in the clothing. People in the community donate, the articles and clothing and so on and so forth. So that's been, and in the last 10 years, it's grown exponentially.
Yes.
So that's a really interesting resource.
Court records and accounts. That's going to be the negative sometimes when you're dealing with a person of color and African descent, because most of the times it's non-specific, or it might just be a group of persons. Just recently in the news, let me see, in the past 3 or 4 years or so, the 272, Georgetown 272. I have a cousin who is descended from, Hawkins, and that's part of the 272, and that was, because that was a huge sale, and everything was documented, everything was recorded, and that was the only way that they could find that particular thing. But in the 18th century, I know for a fact, according to the tax codes and the laws and everything, you did not have to pay taxes on your living property until they were 15 years old. So that was the time that they were entered into the court systems or the records, being that you had to say female or male, and this is the age. And then they all of a sudden just appear. Caroline Branham is another a great example of that. She's my primary person that I narrate or interpret for up in Mount Vernon. And all of a sudden, she just appears in the ledgers saying that she was making sheets for this one woman, a hired worker, Sarah Flatfoot, that was there on the property. Before that, we have no idea where she was, where she came from. So I used critical thinking skills, and I decided in order to expand her world, to make it more interesting and to connect her with the Washington family and the Custis family, that I would say that her mother was part of the dowry slaves that were brought up when Mrs. Washington was married back in 1759, and that her mother has passed on. So it gives her an opportunity to talk about Mrs. Washington before she came up to Mount Vernon.
The other part of that is I've been portraying Molly Danke at the Bennington and Danaher Award. So there's been a lot of research people have been trying to do, but since she was with a slave, she didn't, of course she couldn't get married, she couldn't register, but she didn't want to register her children because then she didn't want them to become enslaved. Anyone to know they had children. So boy, trying to trace that type of thing can be so incredibly difficult. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah, you keep running into all of these little...
Right, because of the laws and because of the problems they didn't want to run into. And they basically, she moved where she moved to get away from any kind of civilization or courts or, anything because they wanted to live and be free.
Yes.
They wanted to be free.
Yeah.
So that's a real interesting thing.
It's like not leaving a paper trail.
Yeah,
you need
wow.
a paper trail.
You want the paper trail.
You want the paper trail, but you don't want to leave a
So
paper
trying to
trail.
find it is so incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Another place to look is the small museums in an area because Captain Edgar Museum is in Shadyside. They have an excellent local research library because the families have stayed there forever. And there were a lot of plantations right there. And Bill Swamp Road was an African-American road, basically. And Dalesville has a whole section that was African-American.
Right, that Button Farm, is now been, in the last 5 years, has been rebuilt. You know about that?
No.
Oh, okay, cool.
Y'all are giving me all my little filter places.
Yeah, you're down in Virginia and we're up here in Maryland.
All right, then thank you so very much for adding to that part of the conversation. You guys have given me even more wonderful choices as far as resources can go and everything. So really excited about that. So the fun stuff. I love research. Yeah.
Also, I'm a children's librarian, so I probably have read or owned every one of those children's books you're talking about.
Every single one. Every single one.
So come to my house and you can play.
My husband, his wife was like, another book, and I was like, shut up. I give myself a $40 book budget every month.
Oh, I can tell you how to find them for $1.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk.
That's why I have so many. Okay. Yeah, this is, to me, it's like my fun time. I loved stumbling down rabbit holes. Sometimes I'm down there for a really long time. You do understand what I mean by rabbit holes, right? Yeah, okay, good. All the heads are nodding. So make sure you sleep. Play. I got the people down there doing the minuet. They cutting the rug on, the colonial rug. Read, eat, and repeat. Honestly, this is my favorite time when developing anything or anyone. I'm presently trying to develop another program for Mount Vernon in which I narrate the lives of 4 different women and how they're all interconnected, but I'm looking at it from the standpoint of a matriarch that's there on the property. Okay, you're gonna get to see some of my artwork. Create. And this is where the happy little index cards come in, if anybody wanted to do a little index card with me. And honestly, this is I find a really easy way to do this. Okay, so I've got my happy little cutout person, my little cookie person, my paper doll image. And assembly. And you see how the persons here are, let me see, there you go. These people are already assembled, and these people are not. Yes. That was so nice of them. So very nice of them. And so it's broken into 3 different sections. And this is, I think, is like one of the easier ways to kind of assemble your person. So we're going to start at the very beginning. This is a very good place to start. Okay, let's start down here at the bottom. And you see down here at the bottom, we have their legs. Where are their legs attached to? Ah, it's a place. Okay, so we're going to start off with place, of course. Location. Location is everything. Where are you? No, really, where are you? Are you in a barn, a field, a tavern? Where are you? Are you on a farm? I got the wonderful opportunity to be escorted around the property with Mr. Dalton over there, and he was telling me how, the site is absolutely beautiful, and how they're very open to allow you to interpret in pretty much whatever space that you request. You don't know what a blessing that is, because I don't often get to, or you may not often get to, choose your interpretation space or your narration space. So if it's a physical structure, yeah, that's going to tell like most of the story for you, but location is so very important. And if you are in a random open location, you need to create your world around you. You need to build your world around you. How do you build your world around you? With different props or articles, if music or song, whatever it is that you need to do to create that environment. So place is very important, and to me that's the first step. So I would say, oh, I want to stay with the 18th century, so I have to include everything in the 18th century. But if you wanted to go into the 19th century, you get to add the story quotes. Yeah, I don't like you. But it's all about the resources that are available there, that time, that space. I always give people the tip, start in the outside and bring your character to the inside, to the core, to the center. Timing is everything. When in history are you? What's happening around you? That goes with starting out and then coming in, kind of like a proper table setting with all the pieces of silverware. When you have more than just a knife and a fork and a spoon, when you have double of anything, you always start with the outside pieces. And as the courses are presented and removed, you have less and less and less until you're left with what you need to get to the entree, the meat of the situation. So it's the same exact thing. You're eating, you're having a beautiful, elaborate meal, but you need to start on the outside. Start with the salad fork, start with the soup spoon, and things of that particular nation. Plans and directions. Do you have a destination? Are you at your destination? Mission driven. That blends into passions and purposes, which are going to be our next stop of creating a person. Yay! I love how the lady, she has a little heart there, because women are heart-driven and men are head-driven. So it kind of works out. It definitely kind of works out. But that's another fun stuff. But it is, goodness gracious, it can be a very emotional step. The more information that you might seem to gather about a person. I'd like to take a quick little side journey. This is a side note for me. If you are interpreting somebody that is convict indentured labor, this would be the time that you're going to say, where is he coming from as far as what has just occurred to put him in this position in life? What are his feelings about it? Is that person still bitter? Are they resentful? Did they leave somebody that they really cared about behind? Are they working towards a certain particular goal? What is their end result? You know, is it to work off the indenture chute as quick as they possibly can? Or are they just fed up with it and they're trying to figure out a way to get out of whatever it is? If you're a person of color, this can be extremely difficult, or in the emotional realm, as to you have to ask yourself a few questions about how you came to be, again, your personality or what your feelings are. Are you in love with somebody? Are you passionate about somebody? Have you lost somebody in your life? Are you trying to get to somebody in your life? Are you carrying a child? Yeah. These are really interesting and deep questions that you kind of have to ask yourself. And you know, it's like, if you are with child, who's the father of that child? How was that child conceived?
I need some clarification on the term indentured, because my understanding, African Americans were rarely
Yes. They were classified as slaves after a certain rebellion or a certain account in history. But yes, I'm just speaking to you as a mass and to the people out there in Facebook land.
As being Molly, she would be, you know, she would be indentured, so
Yeah.
that's something that I've been researching, so that's part of this.
Yeah. And I mean, and you have to, you have to understand, it's like, were you just born into that condition because one of your parents was African and you were given over to the court system or you were given over to a church and therefore you're indentured or pretty much a slave for a period of time, and then once that period of time is up, then you receive your freedom? Or were you actually, sent over here as punishment for a crime? Or, this is what you brought upon yourself, a lot that you brought upon yourself. But yes, as it comes down to people of color, as African descent, no, that luxury was not afforded to us as we had no legal claims to enter into contract with anyone.
There's also a lot of interest in this area with people escaping. So because they've got the trail you can follow, and people can go in and and on the trail and all that sort of thing.
All of that stuff.
So there's a lot of that too, so there's all the feelings and the things that, all of that.
And you have to consider these things if you want to make a complete, like a man or woman. If you want to have a complete person, these are kind of the things that you might want to consider. As a person of color, and I know I'm speaking to people that are out there in TV land or YouTube land right now, you might want to take it upon yourself to write for yourself an advertisement for sale, as well as write for yourself a runaway ad.
That book, I just ordered the book, I'm trying to think what it's called,
It'll come to you.
I'll get the title, but it's a compilation of the ads.
Yeah, and that'll increase that heart zone, that emotion, zone, to where you know what your purpose and your passion, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish on a daily basis. So if you're just popping into the situation, even if it's just for a day or a weekend immersion, these are the kind of things that you want to have tucked someplace in your psyche, and as to why you always carry with you this small silk ribbon, because it reminds you of somebody. It might be the only traits that you have of a particular person. If you are not a person of African descent, and you're not narrating or interpreting a person of African descent, it might also be helpful for you to also, because runaway ads would apply to an indentured servant as well. So you might want to write yourself, a runaway ad to include what your skills were, what your education level was, where you came from initially, whom you were indentured to. I just recently realized this, and I discovered this, that Benjamin Franklin had an indentured. He was indentured to his brother, of all people. And he was like, no, not having it. So, even somebody like Benjamin Franklin realized that he did not want to be in this committed contract. He didn't want to feel obligated. He knew that he needed a life of freedom and of choice. And it was I'm not going to say it was easier for him to achieve it, but he had to go through, the same struggles and trials that anybody would have had to go through. But because of, the simple nature of the color of his skin, it was a little more accepted, to where somebody was like, oh, okay, I'll give you a job. I'll give you a try here because, God forbid, that was me, and I was indentured. I was in a contract that I didn't like or didn't want, or anything like that. So far that's good, that's helpful? Okay. So yeah, make sure that you make yourself a runaway ad and a sales ad. Okay, purposes and passions, that's just basically right where we are. Again, note your skills. Do you speak a language? Note your trades. Are you a blacksmith, a carpenter, a seamstress, a sewer? All of these things are going to be listed, even if you're trying to sell yourself or represent yourself. you'd want to say, I have worked for so-and-so. I have made a gown for this person. Or I have, worked in this particular hospital and nursed this person back to health or delivered these, these babies and things like that. Your wares, things that you have around you, your talents. Are you a singer? Are you a musician? In my research, I've come across ads that offer a little bit more for a person of color or African descent that was a skilled musician. If they were a singer, if they played the fiddle or violin, if they played the harpsichord, the piano, whatever it is, they were worth a little bit more. The owners, the previous owners, were a little bit more anxious. And oftentimes what you think is going to be a benefit to you once you get in the outside world, once you're a fugitive, once you run away, might be the very thing that's going to pull you back into captivity or pull you back into slavery because you're trying to make money doing what you already know to do. But that is the very thing that everybody's looking for. It's like, oh, he's skillful, on the fiddle. He's skillful on the violin. Yes, ma'am.
You might want to also add religion to that. Does this person have a
Practice a
religion?
certain religion.
Is there something being forced on him or her? Or is he being treated in a certain way that because of the religion of somebody else? Or is he hiding a religion from the old country? Those kinds of things might be.
Yes. Thank you so very much. That was one of the ways, in referring again to the Georgetown 272, the Hawkins, that was one of the ways that they found where they were, this particular line of descendants and everything, was because they were practicing Catholics. They decided to go to church there in Louisiana and have one of their marriages actually documented and recommitted there in an actual church. And it was from that simple church documentation that they were re-entered into history, so we knew, where they ended up, these particular persons, ended up, and then everything branched out from there. So, yeah, I love that. Thank you so very much. I like this open forum.
Not everybody knows who the Georgetown 272 is.
Oh.
You might just take a minute to explain what that is.
All right, forgive me. Let me see, I want to say 3, maybe 5 years ago, Georgetown University, which is located over in Washington, D.C., let me see, they decided to come forward with a public apology, acknowledging that they, in an effort, years and years and years ago, back in 1800s, I believe it was, sold 272 persons, slaves, that were in their holdings, that were out working on the farms in Maryland in order to save the college, the university. And in making that public acknowledgement and that apology, all of these other things started to come to fruition, where these people had found out, the descendants had found out indeed that a lot of them down in Louisiana, which was where they were sold down to mostly, goodness gracious, that they were actually indeed from, all the way up north, which, it's still the South, but still, they were from all the way up north. It is, I read the articles and the accounts, and I wept. I absolutely cried, because these were people, and they kept, coming to them, and they, worshipped, and they had the same religious practices as, these Jesuit priests and everything. That was the only world that they knew, the only life that they had, and they were in these families working out on farms to support, this institution and everything. And there's account after account of the people going to the priests and with tears in their eyes, begging and pleading, with confusion, saying, I don't know what I did wrong. Why do I have to go? Don't I work hard? It's like, why do I have to go? It's like, what's gonna happen to my family and everything? And, luckily, most of them weren't too separated to where it's like you got a large group here on this property and a large group here on this property, so they were able to keep ties. But imagine living your whole entire life doing what you're supposed to be doing, and especially they're telling you, you know, under, you know, this particular religious practice, that if you keep these morals and these characteristics and these traits, that you're going to receive your heavenly reward, and, you know, you're not going to receive any punishment. And these people were looking at this like, I'm being punished. What did I do wrong? Just tell me what I did wrong. I promise I won't do it anymore. That you can go look up on your own time. And again, it's one of those things that frustrates me because I can't narrate to that time. Caroline is stuck, you know, in her timeline, and because of my location, I am stuck narrating only what happens on that location or at that site, even though I have her history beyond that site, even up until death, because of her descendants, whom I'm, you know, they've kind of like adopted into the family. Yes, ma'am.
A recent finding of Bruce, the actress,
Yes, I saw that episode.
her roots
Mm-hmm.
back to this.
Yep, she did. She certainly did. And which I'm really excited to like talk to my cousin and ask her whether or not she's on part of her branches. Yes, sir.
You mentioned religion.
Yeah.
Historically significant things, an awful lot of mistakes with my word and Muslim.
Yes.
There are a lot of records of people, you know, in their passenger cells.
Yes.
Scripts of the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
They were just beaten out of it.
Yeah. I know of only two persons on the mountain, as far as the documentation that I've read so far, because Mount Vernon is separated into 5 different farms. So I have the information, or most of the database, on the people that were on Mansion House Farm. I very rarely get an opportunity to go and narrate or interpret for anybody on one of the other farms. But 2 of the persons that were up on Mansion House Farm were practicing Muslims, and it was a woman and her daughter, and there were Fatima and little Fatima. Of course, we always, you know, make everything hard and say Fatima. But she was a practicing Muslim, and it, you know, it's documented, but I don't know any more about her life other than that gave hint, because they were saying, oh, you know, she had an unusual name, and then to come to find out that she was, you know, she had certain observances that she would go through. We didn't have any standing church structures. We have represented there, as far as religion is concerned, about the enslaved population, Caesar. I always call him our preacher man. And he is documented as running away 4 different times. And he's not documented as having any demotions or any punishments as a result of running away. So it's probably thought that General Washington, or whoever the overseer was to that particular farm, just said, you know, he's going out preaching to his congregation. His congregation might be on this particular farm. It was really late when they had their camp meeting, so we're just going to excuse him for the, you know, for the day's labor or whatever it was. And so 2 times they sent somebody out to go and find him, and 2 times he was, you know, just showed up missing for roll call, and then he came back on his own. So, yeah, when you get into religious practices, that is so much fun. I mean, it's very, very, very interesting, and it's extremely rich to try to see if there's any notation. And again, it comes down to, these were the people that were experiencing it, living it, and unless somebody on the outside observed it or took note of it, you didn't know what was occurring. Yeah. Thank you all for, like, you know, reminding me of the whole religion and everything, because that's really, really important. Again, who am I? Who or what do I love? For whom or what would I risk everything for? Getting back to, you know, it's like you're indentured or you're enslaved, and your loved one is on another property. Or perhaps you know that if you run away, you can probably get enough money to try to purchase, you know, your family out of captivity and such. I would like to think that that was probably Hercules' inspiration for running away, for leaving Mount Vernon. Hercules was a well-noted chef, was a cook there on Mount Vernon's property, and He was Washington's, favored and prized chef, a wonderful culinary artist, today's standards and everything. So where he cooked for, up people in life and everything. And he was a Washington slave, which meant that he was owned by Washington, and he wasn't part of the Custis dowry estate. Those were the people that were actually an inheritance for the grandchildren. So Martha Washington didn't have a right to sell them or do anything to them. She had to keep them in trust and then wait till her grandchildren got to an age of inheritance, and then they would be split or divided equally amongst them and everything. And that was the case of his children and his wife, that they were part of the Custis dowry property. So I would like to think that that was his inspiration for running away, that and the fact that he felt very, very slighted and that he had fallen out of favor with Washington. And getting enough money to be able to come back and make an offer to the Custis family and say, here, can I have my daughters and my son? How much are they worth to you? And I can give you that amount of money. But sadly enough, he was kind of lost in history. I think there's probably 2 accounts of possible sightings of him, and this beautiful portrait that is painted and is believed to be him, but we have no idea what actually happened to him. So motivation, whom or what would I risk everything for? And that's always really, really good. Yay! You get to the big heads, the top of the food chain, so to speak, the entree. Alrighty, and this is going to be plans. The thoughts of your subject are a very crucial last step. It's been saved for last in the process, of course, because it's often been said to me in my lifetime, if you don't know where you've come from, or how can you go forward? If you don't know where you've come from or where you've been, how can you move forward? The head connects the passions and the purposes to what the plans are, if there are any plans for the future. So ask yourself the following questions. Am I content? Are you content being in a contract with somebody for 5 years, 7 years, 3 years, whatever it is, 25 years? Are you content because you are a shopkeeper, you're a merchant, you're a sailor, you're a soldier? Are you content? Am I at my best? That's another one of those tricky little questions. Yeah, you have to answer that personally for yourself as to what you think is your best. Am I searching for someone or something? Am I qualified? Or am I being denied? Do you have rights? Do you have privileges afforded to you? Even if you are an enslaved person or you're narrating or interpreting for an enslaved person, you might be given certain privileges that other people might not be, according to your proximity with, the owners of you, or you might be given certain favors like Hercules, or own a judge, because you were closer to the family as well. And there is a lesser known young woman, a woman is in part of the population there at Mount Vernon called Charlotte. And Charlotte seemed to have it in her head that she had quite a relationship with Mrs. Washington. So far as to once when she was whipped for insolence, she threatened to tell Mrs. Washington on the person that whipped her. She says, I ain't been beaten 14 years. How dare you beat me? I'm going to tell Mrs. Washington on you. And he freaked out. Because he knew that she had a relationship, at least she was accustomed to being with Mrs. Washington. So he immediately goes and he writes a letter to General Washington saying, yeah, this is what happened, and she did this, and she said this, so I did this. And General Washington backed him up and said, oh, you were right to whip her. She well deserved it and everything. So that's plans to the top part. Let me see. Have you chosen a gender? I know this sounds really, really late in the question, and you don't have a choice necessarily. Have you chosen an economic class? That's going to be very, very important. Again, are you gentry class? Are you merchant class? Are you common class? You know, are you enslaved population? Are you indentured? All of these things are going to make for a complete interpretation. What's the education level or the potential for learning? Ooh. Again, it is based on where you have placed yourself in time. In Virginia, the slave codes did not restrict the use of or attaining literacy, learning how to read or to write until much later, until after the rebellion, Harper's Ferry. Yeah, the whole yeah. So no, it wasn't Harper's Ferry. It was gosh, his name, Nat Turner's Rebellion. There you go. Nat Turner's Rebellion changed so much for everybody. And you have to sometimes go out again to the world, what's happening in the world. And even, it might not even be something that's happening here in North America. It might be something that's going on in another country, another colony, you know, Haiti, or, you know, like Liberia, what's going on in other places that are going to be determining what the rules and the laws and the regulations and restrictions are going on here. Yes, sir.
The Haitian rebellion, for example, had an enormous impact
Mhm.
in the Carolinas.
It had.
Because if you go to cemeteries,
Mhm.
you see all these people that were born at Port-au-Prince and had to be.
Yep.
Every fresh person in Haiti was killed.
Yep.
And there was an enormous repression of life.
Yes.
They were afraid to have that.
Toussaint Louverture. Love. That was a wonderful rabbit hole I fell into for like 3 days.
And you referred to the Finding the Roots.
Mm-hmm.
They've also been replaying at WHUT, the station out of Howard University. Is really well known for this. You can get that channel. They've been playing the Many Rivers series. Are you familiar with that? Oh my gosh, if you haven't seen it, they were playing it again yet today. I think I've been recording it. And it's a 5-part series starting with the beginnings of slavery in the 14 and 1500s in Florida. So, yeah, and then, you know, because, anyway, it's Kate, he did that as well.
Okay.
So you can probably also find, you can find recordings from
Get the
I'm a
transcripts.
librarian, what can I say? We need to be friends.
I love
Because you've been
libraries.
doing some other things that I can't ask you about. Yeah, so I've been recording this because of Black History Month, and of course WHUT being Howard University, and they also do seminars and things at their studio, which I've gone to, so they're
I
really.
haven't had a chance to get out here, and again, I'm cemented to this
Right,
one little,
I know.
you know, 2 years in, you know, in the life of George Washington, you know, and it's frustrating, and I just want to, you know, break out and expand. So I'm giving you all the information on how to break out and how to expand.
They're free, and they do these seminars and stuff at the university.
Many rivers. Yeah.
It's either 4 or 5 parts.
Yeah.
Very exciting, and using all kinds of primary sources and photographs and some
Yeah, and because we're discovering more and more oral histories are being actually accepted and documented and entered into these resources, you know, finally, ever since, you know, DNA evidence, you know, proved with, you know, the
The other
Hemmings
thing you said about
lineage.
narratives that's very interesting, I don't know if you're aware in Maryland that there's a big historical library in Baltimore, the Pratt Central Library. Okay, there's a big, they built a new building, and it's got the Maryland Library, and it also has the African American Library.
Is that like Ann Arbor?
No, that's Baltimore City, that's
Okay.
Pratt was built in the 1800s. But I borrowed some narratives, you know, some slave narratives, some narratives that are quite interesting. And one of the things they wrote, which was, when you said that before about the words, well, in the introduction to the slave narrative, it was quite interesting, because what they said was that since the slaves, you know, weren't allowed to write, that, you know, somebody had to write for them. And it wasn't just interpreting their words, but the whites didn't want to write down what had been done to them.
Yeah.
Right. So if they said, you know, I was beaten, or I was put in one of those horrible, you know, those
Collars,
collars,
bell
right?
collars.
Oh, I don't want to write that down. I don't want to write that the white people did that to you. So that
transitioning,
Yeah, bring that
yeah.
in, so, but I'll have to tell you more about that library, 'cause you're
It's like take a couple days PTO
Yeah.
and just kind of go hang out down there.
Yeah.
And then just think. So exercise critical thinking, where you're going to find all of these holes, and you're trying to connect the dots, as I said, before in the beginning. Just exercise critical thinking. Stop and think. It was like, did this person have the opportunity to possibly encounter X, Y, and Z? I've noticed here in this newspaper article that this person happened to be in town and they gave a lecture or they gave a speech or they were here to receive an award or they were here in battle. Could that person have possibly interacted with this person? And that will further expand, your interpretation. Is it possible that maybe, somebody in the family might have taught them secretly to read? Again, expanding and connecting those dots to make a complete interpretation or a complete character. Whatever it is that you can think of, that if it's a possibility, if it's slightly plausible, because you're interpreting somebody that is not documented, from beginning to end, I'd say include it. This is me going on the record saying include it until you have information that it is not, possible, which 9 chances out of 10 you're not going to find that information. But if you're just engaging in an interpretation and you're not trying to like teach the facts that if it's documented and you know that this occurred and this happened to this person and this person was born here, don't decide to make this person that is documented as being 35 years old in this particular year, 1790, 97, as being, oh, well, because I'm 45, or I want to make them younger than they actually are because you're throwing off the whole entire interpretation. You're giving information that is incorrect, and it's going to affect so many other things and so many people around you if you're giving a less than truthful interpretation. Yes?
I just started thinking, my family is originally from West Virginia. So I started to do some family history in my great-grandmother, and I kept looking for West Virginia, and I don't want to say that.
There wasn't one until,
It was Virginia.
Yeah.
She was born. So sometimes these historical things.
and that expands, where you get to look at. Because until a certain time in history, it was recorded as Virginia. It was recorded as Virginia, So there's so many different ways to making your character complete, putting all the little Lego pieces together to make fun stuff happen. Add batteries. I hate low battery. I absolutely hate low battery. It's like the having a little energizer battery. And test drive it, just try it out often. Okay, so does anybody have any particular questions or comments or anything that I did not cover before? Yes, there.
I've seen some of your tours at Mount Vernon,
Yeah.
where you portray Caroline. They're very good. I was wondering if you could talk about first-person interpretation, where you are a character, and third-person interpretation, where you talk about people. What are the differences between those, and what are the benefits and cons to each of those?
All right. As far as first-person interpretation, again, you have to stick to the documented facts. Everything that has documentation concerning it, then you have to basically start with that. You are already given your place, so you already have your basis, your foundation. What you need to build are, the second two portions, what your purpose, your plans, your, goals are, and then, it's like, what your mindset is, basically. And so I have decided that Caroline is, she's very accommodating. She's extremely pleasant when she's around you. But as soon as you leave the room, she's a chambermaid. She's a chambermaid and she's a sewer. So she comes in contact with the family, the visitors, the guests. She's always on, always, always, always on. And so I only have maybe 3 incidents of things that happen in Caroline's life, and so I incorporate those in between there, you know, in telling her story, but all the other things are just like, you know, filling in the space. You know, she's this, you know, big happy little Lego person, but you need to keep attaching things to her to make her complete. Now, third person is outside of the box, and you don't have to have a specific, let me see. Well, you choose your time, of course, your time and your place. The same things do apply to them as far as what's driving you, what are your passions, what are your goals, you know, where did you come from, what's your mindset. Think about physical characteristics, because if it's somebody that's already set as it's a first person narrative that you're doing, or a first person interpretation that you're doing, they might say lame Alice. You can't say, you know, that Alice isn't lame. She got, you know, she went to a tent meeting, she went to a cat meeting, Caesar laid hands on her, and she's not lame anymore. You can't do that. But if you're doing third person, you can say, oh, well, you know, it's like, I walk with this limp, you know. It's like, oh, well, why do you walk with this limp? Well, you know, it's like, because I was doing this, and I injured myself. So you have a lot more flexibility, but you still and all want to make a complete character, to where even if you're taken away from that location and you decide to go to IHOP, and somebody comes across you at IHOP and you want to take on the persona that you've just been interpreting down at the site, you can give them a full story account, a full account of, you know, your life. It's like, well, when were you born? You know, how old are you? I was like, I don't know. You know, when I was exactly born. It's like, oh, all right. It's like, I noticed that you talk a little funny. You know, it's like, why is that? Oh, my owners are, you know, German, they're Italian, they're French. You know, so I might sound a little bit like them. Use the vocabulary. You know, interject whatever vocabulary that you might want to have, any dialect that you want to have. Again, if you're doing first person, you have to stick to what is already documented as much as possible, at all times. And then add the things through critical thinking skills that you don't know about. You know, what was their temperament like? You know, were they allergic to anything? What was their favorite food? Children ask me things like that all the time as Caroline. It's like, what's your favorite thing to eat, Caroline? And I have done my research, and I was like, oh, well, my favorite thing to eat is soft cake. I make a nice pot of soft cake. For my children, what's soft cake? Oh, it's a fish stew. We put most anything in it, except for my children. They love to eat kush-kush. What's kush-kush? Well, we get a ration of cornmeal, a peck if you're an adult, half a peck if you're a child, and such. And with that, I might make some nice whole cakes and some cornbread. I said, after it's become stale, after it's been here a day or two, if there are any leftovers, which there are, I'm taking and turning it into a hash, where I add onions and a little broth from the roasted chicken that I had and such. My children eat it right up. Because I've been hanging out in cookbooks to where I know the ingredients, even though I haven't physically made it, just listing the ingredients, just how it's assembled, is going to give a more complete interpretation. So that's basically, I think, the differences between first and third person. Is that helpful? Yes? Okay, excellent. Yes, Sarah?
I know we talked about using the various primary and secondary sources, and I was just kind of curious, I know songs can have a huge influence, but like in terms of the arts, how like, besides like, singing, any like sketches, stuff like that, like I know arts reflect.
The plays, everything that's going on at the time. I have slave songs of the United States. The challenge with this is that this particular book was not published until after the Civil War. What happened to all of the other beautiful spirituals? They were not documented. A lot of them were lost. There is wonderful man that I had the opportunity to meet just recently. His name is Calvin Earl. Did you know that he went to the Supreme Court? He went to the powers that be and had the African American spiritual, the Negro spiritual, classified as a national treasure. This just happened in our generation, in our lifetime. He goes on tour, he gives lectures, and plays a mean guitar. And he talks about the history of these beautiful works of art that were there, that were overlooked, that were not counted as being worth any acknowledgement because they were not created by Europeans, because they were not listed in any musical scores. The sad part of most of these songs that are listed here in this particular anthology is that they have taken them and applied them to European musical scales and standards. It's bastardizing them, basically.
It's like a film music into the mountain.
Yes. No, that's a bluegrass. I'm a bluegrass and bourbon girl myself. Yes, dear.
I just heard on the radio the other night, it was an NPR discussion about, the African spirituals.
Yeah.
And if there were actually messages hidden inside the lyrics.
Yeah.
So they weren't what they sounded.
They were not. They were not. A lot of them were not. I'm doing a program currently at Mount Vernon called Mata Masi, which are African words for wisdom and prudence. And it basically means from my ears to your ears. What I hear, I keep. And that was a method of learning and communication. So I'm going to sing this verse. I'm going to call out this verse and you're going to respond. So the call and response form of singing, which was not really accepted because they were just like going, oh no. It's like everybody's supposed to just, sing in parts. It's like we need to get the harmonies in there. This population didn't care about any harmonies. They were singing together in unity. And the caller was feeling whatever the emotions were of that particular moment, that particular day. And then when he got tired, the next person would pick up the calling. And the next person would pick up the calling. Until whatever task it was, until whatever story it was told and it was complete. And it was beautiful and it was perfect. And because it didn't apply to the standards in which everything is guided, everything is strict, everything is recorded, you are not supposed to deviate from this whatsoever, it was often miscounted. So it's just been recently, that we're starting to delve into them a lot deeper. Nikki Giovanni, she is excellent about when she lists the Negro spirituals and hymns. She lists them just in prose, the way that, they were written down or taken into account, initially, to where, this verse might be this particular way in the Northern Territories, up here in the tobacco country, and then you get out to the rice coast, and it might have a slightly different verse, but it's the same song. And then you get down to the cotton territories and the cotton states. You know that it's the same song, but it still has a slightly different feel, in the rhythm or the manner, or they might throw in a different verse, something that's applicable to their community or what's going on in their life.
That's true of rap, for instance.
Yeah.
If you try to write down rap,
You lose.
it's a point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is very true of spiritual.
Mhm. Yeah, it's folk music, it's like the folk music, like the bluegrass, like those story songs, because that's what they were. They were story songs, they were messages, they were maps. I love talking about, with the young children. I sing the song, Follow the Drinking Gourd, and I have them act out the different parts, right? And you're traveling, and it's a sung map. And it was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know when to go. And it tells you what time of year to go, what path to journey on. It was like, what constellation to follow. All of these things, are sung. And the more you sing it, the more it stays in your head. Everybody knows song poisoning, song pollution. So you get the song in your head, and you can't stop singing it. So Matamasi, you know, it was basically telling the children or teaching the children this is what you need to do to survive in the world. There's this little song called Juba, and Juba gets in trouble. You know, Juba, yeah, and so it says Juba this and Juba that. Juba killed the yellow cat. You know, and so it's talking about this one particular slave named Juba, and Juba's being called to go do this, and Juba's being told to go do that. So Juba gets fed up and he kills the yellow cat. Well, it's not a yellow cat, it's his mistress. It's his blonde-haired mistress. And then it goes on to say, here comes trouble, trouble Juba. Well, I always take this song and I equate it to the slave code that says slaves are at no time supposed to raise their hand to strike out and hit a white person, whether in anger or whether, you know, in disregard. You know, it's like your punishment for that a lot of times was like 30 lashes, and sometimes it was death. Just because you dare to try to defend yourself. Take that song and you're trying to teach a young woman. If somebody wants to take advantage of you, if somebody wants to touch you and it doesn't make you feel nice, they have the right to do that, and you can't push back, you cannot fight, you cannot strike them, or this is going to happen to you. Think of Juba.
Do you know Untitled Chapter?
No, I don't know that one yet.
Those were stories that were the same type of stories, and they weren't actually put in print until, I think it was the 50s or 60s. That collection. I told you, I have to come to my house.
Girl, you're gonna be my